The air in the underground chamber grew heavier with each passing second. The glowing symbols on the walls pulsed like a heartbeat, throwing strange shadows across the stone floor. The alien cat girl, Sira, looked at Rafi and Mira with urgent eyes. "They are coming," she whispered again, her voice shaking. Rafi glanced toward the dark tunnel at the far end of the chamber. The footsteps were getting louder. They weren't rushing. The sound was slow, steady, and deliberate. Whoever was coming knew they had time. Mira moved quickly to the altar, crouching beside the glowing bands around Sira's wrists. She pulled out her handheld scanner, its soft green light flickering over the bindings. "These are energy restraints," she muttered. "Old tech, not human. They're feeding off some kind of power source in the room." Rafi kept his eyes on the tunnel. "Can you break them? Not without shutting off whatever's powering this place?" Mira replied. Sira shook her head quickly. "No time. Hide. If they see you, they will not let you leave." But it was already too late. From the darkness of the tunnel, the hooded figures emerged one by one. Their robes were deep gray, stitched with faint silver patterns that glimmered in the altar's light. The hoods cast shadows over their faces, and the air seemed to grow colder as they entered the chamber. At least a dozen of them formed a circle around the altar, moving with slow, precise steps. None of them spoke at first, then the one in front, taller than the rest, stepped forward. His voice was calm, but carried a strange weight. "You do not belong here, humans." Rafi felt his throat tighten. She sent a distress signal. She asked for help. The leader tilted his head slightly. "The chosen one does not need your help. She is a key to a greater purpose. Her place is here, as the eclipse draws near." Mira's eyes narrowed. "A key for what?" The hooded leader did not answer. Instead, he turned to Sira. "Your people failed to protect you. Now, your strength will serve a higher will." Sira's ears lowered slightly, but she didn't look afraid. She looked angry. "You do not understand the danger," she said, her voice firm. "If you call the Veiled One, it will not obey you. It will consume everything." The leader chuckled softly, though there was no warmth in the sound. "Old stories to frighten children. The Veiled One will give power to those who summon it. Power beyond worlds." Rafi's pulse quickened. "And you think hurting her will get you that power?" The leader turned his hooded face toward him. "No harm will be done. Her presence, her life force, will open the gate. That is all." Mira exchanged a quick glance with Rafi. The leader's words might have sounded less violent than she expected, but his calm tone somehow made the danger feel even greater. The chanting began. The cultists raised their hands, palms outward, and a low hum filled the air. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and thin threads of light began to stretch from the altar toward the walls, connecting Sira's bindings to the stone. Sira's breath quickened. She looked at Rafi and Mira. "If the threads reach the outer ring, the gate will open. You must stop it." "How?" Rafi asked quickly. "Break the altar's heart stone," she said, glancing toward a crystal embedded near the base. "But if you touch it, they will know." Mira crouched lower, pretending to adjust her scanner. But she was actually studying the crystal. It pulsed faintly, in rhythm with the bindings. She could already guess, shatter that, and the whole system might collapse. Rafi stepped forward, trying to draw the leader's attention. "Why her? Why not choose one of your own?" The leader's voice was even. "Because she is the last of her kind. The Veiled One answers only to rarity, to what is almost lost in this galaxy. Nothing is rarer than her." Rafi's mind raced. Last of her kind. That meant if they lost her, there was no second chance. He forced himself to keep talking, giving Mira more time. "You're gambling with something you don't understand. What if the stories are true?" The leader didn't move, but the chanting grew louder. The threads of light crept further along the walls. Mira took her chance. She reached into her jacket, pulled out a small portable cutter, and flicked it on. The bright beam hissed softly as she aimed it at the crystal. A sharp crack of energy split the air. The leader's head turned instantly toward her. "Stop. Too late." Mira's cutter sliced into the crystal, and it shattered in a burst of blue light. The bindings around Sira flickered weakly. The chanting stumbled as several cultists broke formation. The ground trembled, and the whispering wind roared through the chamber like a living thing. Sarah pulled against the fading energy ropes, and with a final spark, they broke apart. She stumbled forward, free at last. The leader's voice rose sharply. Seize them! The cultists surged forward, but Sarah moved with speed no human could match. She darted between them, using her agility to trip and shove them aside without harming them. Rafi and Mira followed her lead, dodging past grasping hands and rushing toward the doorway they'd entered from. As they ran through the tunnel, the glowing symbols behind them began to fade, their light winking out one by one. The whispering sound grew fainter, but the rumble of footsteps followed them. They reached the canyon outside, the cold moonlight hitting their faces. Mira pointed toward the starling, parked on the ledge ahead. Go, go. Sarah moved like a shadow, reaching the ship first. Rafi and Mira scrambled in behind her. The engines roared to life, and Mira lifted the ship off the canyon floor just as several hooded figures emerged from the tunnel entrance below. From the cockpit, Rafi looked back at the fading ruins. They're not going to stop, are they? Sarah shook her head. No, the eclipse is tomorrow. They will come again, and if they succeed, she trailed off, her golden eyes darkening. It will be the end for more than just this moon. The starling climbed higher, leaving the shadowy canyon behind. But the memory of the whispers followed them into the blackness of space. Starling drifted through the silent dark, leaving the moon far behind. Mira set the ship on a slow course toward empty space, far from any known travel routes. The hum of the engines filled the small cabin. Rafi sat in the co-pilot's seat, but his eyes were on their new passenger. Sarah sat quietly in the corner of the cockpit, her golden eyes fixed on the stars. Her tail curled tightly around her legs, a sign of unease. After several minutes, Rafi broke the silence. All right, I think it's time you tell us exactly what's going on. Sarah turned her gaze toward him. For a moment, she didn't speak, as if choosing her words carefully. You saw the ones who took me. They call themselves the Keepers of the Eclipse. They believe the Veiled One will give them power over all worlds. They are wrong. Mira glanced over her shoulder. Wrong how? Looked to me like they were doing a pretty good job of making trouble. Sarah's ears lowered slightly. The Veiled One is not a giver. It is a devourer. My people fought it long ago. Many worlds were lost before it was sealed away. Rafi leaned forward. Sealed where? In a place between worlds, Sarah said quietly. Not a star, not a planet. A shadow, hidden in the folds of space. It can only be reached when a rare kind of eclipse occurs. When the moon hides the sun of a certain system, and light passes through a path of old gates. That path opens only once every 1,000 years. That time is now. Mira frowned. And you're the key to opening that path. Sarah nodded. I am the last of my people. The Veiled One was sealed by our life force. That same life force can unseal it. The Keepers believe that if they call it, they will control it. But the Veiled One obeys nothing. Once free, it will spread like a shadow across the stars. It will not stop. Rafi felt a cold weight settle in his chest. So they don't just want you. They want the end of everything, even if they don't know it. Mira slowed the ship's engines, letting the stars drift lazily outside. All right, if this thing is so dangerous, why not just, I don't know, hide somewhere they'll never find you? Sarah shook her head. They will keep searching. The Keepers have ships, spies, and old maps. They have been preparing for this moment for generations. If they fail now, they will wait another 1,000 years. But they will never stop. Rafi looked at her steadily. Then we have to stop them before the eclipse. Mira raised an eyebrow. I'm a pilot, not a galactic hero. And last time I checked, the two of us are just one ship against an entire cult. Sarah's eyes softened. You came when I called. That is already more than most would do. The cockpit lights flickered suddenly. A sharp tone beeped on the control panel. Mira glanced at the screen. Incoming transmission, not from the station, not from any registered ship. The voice that came through was deep, calm, and unmistakable. The leader of the Keepers. Humans, he said. his words smooth as glass. "I am speaking to you as one who does not wish to harm without reason." Mira kept her tone flat. "You've got a strange way of showing it. I understand your concern," the leader continued. "The one you have taken is important, but you do not understand her purpose. She carries within her the means to bring an age of light to the galaxy. Join us, and you will share in that light." Rafi's jaw tightened. "And if we refuse?" Pause. "Then you will be hunted until the day you die." The transmission ended with a sharp click. Silence filled the cockpit. Rafi could feel his heartbeat in his ears. "Well," Mira said dryly. "At least he was polite about it." Sira's voice was quiet but firm. "He offers you lies. If you give me to them, the Veiled One will rise. There will be no light, only shadow." Rafi turned to Mira. "You know we can't give her up." Mira's lips pressed into a thin line. "I didn't say we would. But if we're going to keep her safe, we need more than good intentions. We need a plan." Sira leaned forward slightly. "The Keepers need 3 things for the summoning: the eclipse, the altar, and me. If any of those is missing, the gate will not open." "The altar," Rafi repeated. "We broke the crystal. Doesn't that mean it's useless now?" "No," Sira said. "The crystal was only part of its bindings. They can repair it with time. But they have another altar. The first was only a channel. The true altar is hidden on the eclipse path." Mira frowned. "So if we find it before they do, we can destroy it." "Yes," Sira said. "If the true altar is destroyed, the eclipse will pass without opening the gate. The Veiled One will remain sealed for another 1,000 years." The idea was simple. The risk was not. Rafi ran a hand over his face. "All right. So, we're talking about going to some ancient altar, guarded by people who think we're their enemy, and blowing it up before the galaxy's most dangerous shadow being wakes up." Mira gave him a sideways look. "Sounds like a normal week, doesn't it?" Rafi tried to smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Not exactly." Sira stood and moved toward the cockpit window. The starlight caught the golden tone of her furred ears. "If you help me, I will take you to a place my people once guarded. It holds knowledge and tools that may aid us. But it is far, and the Keepers will be watching the paths." Mira powered up the engines again. "Then we'd better not waste time." As the starling turned, Rafi looked once more at Sira. She was calm, but he could see the tension in her posture, the kind that came from carrying a burden too heavy for one person. The stars stretched into long lines as the ship jumped into faster than light traveled. Far behind them, somewhere in the darkness, the leader of the Keepers stood before his followers. His voice echoed through the halls of their hidden temple. "They run. Let them. The eclipse will come to us all." The starling slipped out of faster than light travel with a soft shudder. The stars returned to normal, and before them hung a small, dim planet. Its surface was mostly gray, with patches of ice reflecting faint light from a distant sun. Sira stood near the cockpit window, her golden eyes fixed on the world below. "The place we seek is beneath the northern ice cliffs," she said. "It was once a library and armory for my people. Now it is silent." Mira guided the ship toward the planet's thin atmosphere. "Silent sounds good. Silent means no cultists." Sira didn't answer. Rafi noticed her ears twitch slightly, as if she was hearing something no one else could. The descent was smooth, but the moment they touched down on a flat stretch of ice, the silence felt heavier than space itself. There was no wind, no movement, just the endless white and gray of the frozen surface. Rafi adjusted his mask as they stepped out of the ship. The cold bit through his clothes like invisible teeth. "All right," he said, rubbing his arms. "Lead the way." Sira walked ahead, her steps almost soundless on the ice. They followed her toward the cliffs, where jagged walls of frozen rock rose like the teeth of some ancient beast. At the base of one cliff, half buried under ice, was a wide stone archway. Strange markings, faded by time, curved across the top. "This is the entrance," Sira said. "Stay close. There are tunnels below." Inside, the air was warmer, but carried the smell of dust and age. Their footsteps echoed softly in the narrow passage. Dim crystals embedded in the walls gave off a pale blue glow, casting long shadows. This place feels. Mira began, then trailed off, watched Rafi finish for her. Mira nodded. Sarah kept moving until they reached a wide hall. Tall shelves carved from black stone lined the walls, filled with strange metal containers and crystal tablets. In the center stood a low pedestal, on which rested a small, cube-shaped device. Sarah approached the pedestal. This is the map key. With it, we can find the true altar's location. She reached for the cube and the shadows moved. From between the shelves, hooded figures stepped out. Silent as ghosts, more appeared in the hall's side passages, their robes brushing the floor. In the pale blue light, their silver thread patterns seemed to shimmer like cold water. The leader was not here. But the cultists moved with the same measured confidence. The one in front spoke, his voice soft. The keeper's hand is long, little one. Did you think you could hide? Sarah's ears flattened. I do not hide. I prepare. The cultist's eyes glinted beneath his hood, then prepared to serve. Rafi stepped forward, his hands raised slightly. We don't want to fight, nor do we. The cultist replied, give us the girl, and you may walk away. Resist, and you will stay here forever. Mira's voice was cold. Not happening. The cultist sighed, as if disappointed. Then you choose the harder path. The room erupted into motion. The cultists rushed toward the pedestal, but Sarah leapt between them. Her movements quick and precise. She struck one's arm, sending him stumbling, and twisted aside as the other tried to grab her. Rafi darted to the pedestal and snatched the cube. Got it. Mira pulled a small flash device from her belt and tossed it to the ground. A burst of blinding white light filled the hall. The cultists cried out, shielding their eyes. Go. Mira shouted. They ran back through the narrow passage, the sound of footsteps pounding behind them. Sarah led the way, her senses guiding them through twists and turns. The pale blue crystals flickered as they passed, as if reacting to the chase. Rafi glanced back. The cultists were already recovering, moving fast. They're gaining. Not for long, Mira said. Pulling out another small device, she slapped it against the wall as they turned the corner. A moment later, the device sparked and collapsed part of the tunnel behind them, sealing it with a pile of stone and ice. That won't hold them forever, Sarah warned. It doesn't have to, Mira replied. Just long enough to get to the ship. They burst out of the archway into the biting cold. The Starling was just ahead, its hull gleaming faintly under the dim light, halfway across the ice. Sarah suddenly stopped. Her ears twitched again, and her eyes narrowed. Wait, listen. Rafi paused. At first, he heard only his own breathing. Then, a faint hum, low and steady, coming from above. He looked up. A dark shape was descending through the thin clouds, a large ship, its hull painted black, with silver markings matching the cultists' robes. They brought a ship. Mira muttered. Of course they did. The cultist ship landed between them and the Starling. A ramp extended, and more hooded figures began to emerge. They moved quickly, spreading out across the ice, cutting off escape. We can't reach the Starling without going through them, Rafi said. Mira's eyes darted across the frozen terrain. Then we don't go straight, we go round. She pointed toward a jagged line of ice ridges to the right. If we can make it there, we can circle back and get to the ship's rear ramp before they realize. The plan was risky, but they had no time to argue. They sprinted for the ridges, boots slipping slightly on the ice. The cultists shouted, breaking into pursuit. Sarah moved at the front, her steps light and fast despite the terrain. Mira followed close, with Rafi just behind. Blasts of bright light shot past them, warning shots from the cultists' weapons. One struck an ice wall ahead, shattering it into a spray of sharp shards. Rafi ducked low, his breath clouding the air. I think they changed their minds about not hurting us. Keep moving, Mira called back. They reached the ridges and used the uneven ice as cover, weaving through narrow gaps. The cultists' shouts grew fainter for a moment, then louder again as some of them split off to follow. Sarah led them into a shallow hollow between two ice walls. From here, she said, we can cross to the back of your ship, but we must be quick. They made their way along the hollow, the Starling's rear section coming into view. Mira tapped her wrist control, and the rear ramp began to lower. With a soft hiss, the sound, however, drew the cultists' attention. Several of them broke from the main group and rushed toward the ship's rear. The last stretch was a blur of cold air and pounding hearts. They reached the ramp just as the first cultist came into sight. Mira hit the control, and the ramp rose again, sealing them inside. The engines roared to life, and the Starling lifted off the ice, leaving the cultists below as shrinking figures. Rafi collapsed into the nearest seat, clutching the cube tightly. "We got it." Sarah's voice was calm, but her eyes still held a warning. "Yes, but they will not stop. And now, they know where we are going." The Starling cruised through the black silence of space, its engines a steady hum. The cube they had taken from the frozen library rested on the small table in the cockpit. Glowing faintly with golden lines that pulsed like a heartbeat, Sarah sat in the co-pilot's seat, studying the cube closely. Her long fingers traced its edges, and with each touch, the golden lines shifted into new patterns. "This is more than a map," she said softly. "It holds the history of my people and the path to the true altar." Rafi leaned forward from his seat behind her. "And where exactly is this altar?" Sarah tilted the cube slightly, and a small three-dimensional projection appeared above it, a cluster of stars, connected by thin golden lines. One star glowed brighter than the rest. It is on a drifting station, hidden near this system. The station moves with the pull of old gravity wells, making it hard to find without this key. Mira studied the projection. "All right, we find the station, we destroy the altar, and the eclipse passes without trouble." Sarah's ears lowered slightly. "It will not be that simple. The station will be guarded, and the altar cannot be destroyed by simple force. It is tied to an energy core, one that draws power from light itself. To destroy it, we must take away its light." Rafi frowned. "Light, like from the sun?" "Yes," Sarah said, "or any strong source. If we can block it long enough, the altar's chains will weaken. Then we can destroy it." Mira set the coordinates. "Good. Let's get there before the cult does." But the universe had other plans. 2 hours into their journey, an alarm began to beep sharply. Rafi checked the scanner and felt his stomach sink. "We've got a ship on our tail. Big one." Mira pulled up the rear camera. The image showed a black vessel with silver markings, the same design as the cultist ship on the ice world. This one was larger, faster, and closing in quickly. "They must have tracked us from the planet," Mira muttered. "They won't let us reach the altar." Sarah's gaze sharpened. "If they catch us in open space, we will have no place to hide." Rafi glanced at the star chart. "There's an asteroid field 2 minutes from here. If we get inside, we can lose them." Mira nodded. "Hold on." The Starling surged forward, diving toward a scattered cluster of spinning rocks. The asteroids varied in size, some small as a boulder, others large enough to hold a small city. They tumbled slowly in the dark, casting shifting shadows. The cult ship followed, weaving between the drifting stones. Beams of pale light shot past the Starling's hull, one striking a nearby asteroid and breaking it apart into glowing fragments. "They're firing to scare us," Rafi said. "They're firing to hit us." Mira corrected. She spun the ship sharply, dodging a chunk of rock that chase twisted through narrow gaps and sudden turns. The engines whining with the strain. Sarah kept her eyes forward, her voice calm despite the chaos. "Ahead, that cluster of large stones, if we pass. Between them, their size will block the cult ship's weapons for a moment." Mira angled the ship toward the formation. As they passed into the shadow of the largest asteroid, the bright flashes from the cult ship faded, blocked by the rock. "Now's our chance," Rafi said. "We need to do something to slow them down." Mira glanced at him. "You've got an idea?" Rafi hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, but it's risky." He rushed to the small storage compartment and pulled out two magnetic charges. "If I can plant these on one of the larger asteroids, we can push it into their path." Mira frowned. "That means going outside the ship while it's spinning through an asteroid field. I'll be quick." Rafi promised. Sarah stepped forward. "I will go with you." My balance is better in low gravity. Mira didn't like it, but there was no time to argue. She slowed the Starling just enough for Rafi and Sarah to slip out through the airlock. Their suits locking tight. The cold of space was a silent weight around them as they moved along the hull. Rafi kept one hand on the safety line, the other gripping the charge. The asteroid loomed close. Its gray surface pitted and cracked from centuries of collisions. They pushed off the ship. Gliding toward the rock, landing softly, they worked together to place the charges deep in a crack. Once we trigger these, Rafi said, we'll have seconds to get back. Sarah's golden eyes met his. Then we should be fast. They kicked off from the asteroid, drifting back toward the Starling. Behind them, the charges blinked red dot inside the cockpit. Mira kept one eye on the cult ship. Hurry, you two. Rafi and Sarah reached the airlock just as the charges exploded. The blast was silent in the vacuum, but the asteroid shifted. Drifting into the cult ship's path, the black vessel swerved sharply to avoid a collision, scraping against a smaller rock. Sparks flickered along its hull, and its speed dropped. They're slowing down. Rafi shouted as he pulled off his helmet. Good, Mira said. Now let's get to that station before they catch up again. Hours later, the Starling reached the edge of a quiet system. The sun here was pale and distant, its light weak. Sarah studied the cube again, her fingers tracing its glowing lines. The station is near, she said. I can feel the cube's pull. Rafi leaned over her shoulder. We block the light, weaken the altar's chains, and destroy it, right? Yes, Sarah said. But we must do it before the eclipse begins. Once the shadow touches the altar, the gate will open too quickly to stop. Mira's hands tighten on the controls. Then we better break those chains fast, far behind them. In the shadow of the largest asteroid, the cult ship's engines flared back to life. Its hull was scarred, but its course was steady. Inside, the leader of the Keepers stood silent, watching the Starling's fading trail on the screen. Follow them, he said quietly. The chains will break, but for us, not for them. The Starling cruised through the black silence of space, its engines a steady hum. The cube they had taken from the frozen library rested on the small table in the cockpit, glowing faintly with golden lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. Sarah sat in the co-pilot's seat, studying the cube closely. Her long fingers traced its edges, and with each touch, the golden lines shifted into new patterns. This is more than a map, she said softly. It holds the history of my people and the path to the true altar. Rafi leaned forward from his seat behind her. And where exactly is this altar? Sarah tilted the cube slightly, and a small three-dimensional projection appeared above it, a cluster of stars, connected by thin golden lines. One star glowed brighter than the rest. It is on a drifting station, hidden near this system. The station moves with the pull of old gravity wells, making it hard to find without this key. Mira studied the projection. All right, we find the station, we destroy the altar, and the eclipse passes without trouble. Sarah's ears lowered slightly. It will not be that simple. The station will be guarded, and the altar cannot be destroyed by simple force. It is tied to an energy core, one that draws power from light itself. To destroy it, we must take away its light. Rafi frowned. Light, like from the sun. Yes, Sarah said, or any strong source. If we can block it long enough, the altar's chains will weaken. Then we can destroy it. Mira set the coordinates. Good. Let's get there before the cult does. But the universe had other plans. 2 hours into their journey, an alarm began to beep sharply. Rafi checked the scanner and felt his stomach sink. We've got a ship on our tail. Big one. Mira pulled up the rear camera. The image showed a black vessel with silver markings, the same design as the cultist ship on the ice world. This one was larger, faster, and closing in. Quickly, they must have tracked us from the planet, Mira muttered. They won't let us reach the altar. Sarah's gaze sharpened. If they catch us in open space, we will have no place to hide. Rafi glanced at the star chart. There's an asteroid field 2 minutes from here. If we get inside, we can lose them. Mira nodded. Hold on. The Starling surged forward, diving toward a scattered cluster of spinning rocks. The asteroids varied in size. Some small as a boulder, others large enough to hold a small city. They tumbled slowly. In the dark, casting shifting shadows, the cult ship followed, weaving between the drifting stones. Beams of pale light shot past the Starling's hull, one striking a nearby asteroid and breaking it apart into glowing fragments. "They're firing to scare us," Rafi said. "They're firing to hit us." Mira corrected. She spun the ship sharply, dodging a chunk of rock. The chase twisted through narrow gaps and sudden turns, the engines whining with the strain. Sarah kept her eyes forward, her voice calm despite the chaos. Ahead, that cluster of large stones, if we pass between them, their size will block the cult ship's weapons for a moment. Mira angled the ship toward the formation. As they passed into the shadow of the largest asteroid, the bright flashes from the cult ship faded, blocked by the rock. "Now's our chance," Rafi said. "We need to do something to slow them down." Mira glanced at him. "You've got an idea?" Rafi hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, but it's risky." He rushed to the small storage compartment and pulled out two magnetic charges. "If I can plant these on one of the larger asteroids, we can push it into their path." Mira frowned. "That means going outside the ship while it's spinning through an asteroid field. I'll be quick." Rafi promised. Sarah stepped forward. "I will go with you. My balance is better in low gravity." Mira didn't like it, but there was no time to argue. She slowed the Starling just enough for Rafi and Sarah to slip out through the airlock, their suits locking tight. The cold of space was a silent weight around them as they moved along the hull. Rafi kept one hand on the safety line, the other gripping the charge. The asteroid loomed close, its gray surface pitted and cracked from centuries of collisions. They pushed off the ship, gliding toward the rock, landing softly. They worked together to place the charges deep in a crack. "Once we trigger these," Rafi said, "we'll have seconds to get back." Sarah's golden eyes met his. "Then we should be fast." They kicked off from the asteroid, drifting back toward the Starling. Behind them, the charges blinked red dot inside the cockpit. Mira kept one eye on the cult ship. "Hurry, you two." Rafi and Sarah reached the airlock just as the charges exploded. The blast was silent in the vacuum, but the asteroid shifted, drifting into the cult ship's path. The black vessel swerved sharply to avoid a collision, scraping against a smaller rock. Sparks flickered along its hull, and its speed dropped. "They're slowing down," Rafi shouted as he pulled off his helmet. "Good," Mira said. "Now let's get to that station before they catch up again." Hours later, the Starling reached the edge of a quiet system. The sun here was pale and distant, its light weak. Sarah studied the cube again, her fingers tracing its glowing lines. "The station is near," she said. "I can feel the cube's pull." Rafi leaned over her shoulder. "We block the light, weaken the altar's chains, and destroy it, right?" "Yes," Sarah said. "But we must do it before the eclipse begins. Once the shadow touches the altar, the gate will open too quickly to stop." Mira's hands tightened on the controls. "Then we better break those chains fast, far behind them." In the shadow of the largest asteroid, the cult ship's engines flared back to life. Its hull was scarred, but its course was steady. Inside, the leader of the Keepers stood silent, watching the Starling's fading trail on the screen. "Follow them," he said quietly. "The chains will break, but for us, not for them." The drifting station appeared like a ghost in the distance. Its surface was dull metal, pitted with age, with long antenna towers that leaned like broken spears. No light shone from its walls. It floated slowly in the pale sunlight, turning. In silence, "The altar is inside," Sarah said, her voice steady but low. She held the cube close, and its golden light grew brighter with every passing second. Rafi leaned forward, staring through the cockpit window. "Looks empty." "It is not," Sarah said. "The Keepers will already be here. They would not leave the altar unguarded." Mira slowed the Starling and guided it toward a docking port on the station's side. The ship clamped onto the old metal with a deep, heavy thud. "All right," Mira said, standing from her seat. "We go in fast. We block the light. We break the chains. We get out." Rafi checked his gear. And if the cult is already starting the ritual, then, Mira said, we stop it before the eclipse finishes. Syrah's golden eyes met theirs. If we fail, the Veiled One will wake, and it will not go back to sleep. The airlock opened with a groaning hiss, and stale air from the station rushed into their suits. The inside was dark, lit only by faint red lines running along the walls. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the long, narrow hallway. As they moved deeper, the cube in Syrah's hands pulsed faster, guiding them like a beating heart. They reached a wide circular chamber. In the center stood the altar, a tall structure of black stone, its surface smooth and cold, carved with swirling marks. Thin silver chains wrapped around it, glowing faintly. Above, a wide opening in the station's roof let sunlight pour directly down onto the altar. The light made the chains shimmer, and with each shimmer, a low hum vibrated through the floor. The chains are feeding, Syrah said. They grow stronger with light, but they were not alone. From the shadows round the altar, shapes began to move. Figures stepped forward, wearing black robes with silver lines, the keepers. Their hoods hid their faces, but their eyes glowed. Faintly from within. At their center was the leader, tall, with a silver mask shaped like a calm, blank face. His voice carried across the chamber. You should not have come here, strangers. Mira stepped forward, weapon in hand. We're here to stop this. The masked leader tilted his head. The gate will open soon. You cannot stop the turning of the stars. Syrah held the cube close to her chest. You twist the old ways. The altar was never meant for this. The leader took a slow step toward her. And yet, here we are. With a small gesture from his hand, the keepers began to move, and Rafi reacted first, pulling a flash charge from his belt and tossing it toward the nearest group. It burst into a blinding light, forcing several keepers back. Mira fired a stun blast at another, sending him sprawling. Syrah stayed near the altar, studying the chains. The cube in her hands flickered faster, showing symbols in the air above. She could see a pattern, a sequence to break the chains. But the light from the sun was still too strong. We need to block the light, she shouted. Mira ducked behind a pillar, firing another stun blast. How? This whole roof is open. Rafi scanned the chamber quickly. His eyes caught a control panel near one of the side walls. There, he ran for it, dodging a keeper's strike. Reaching the panel, he pulled off the cover and began rewiring. Sparks flew as he crossed the old power lines. High above, heavy metal panels began to shift, sliding slowly over the open roof. The sunlight dimmed, but not completely. Keep it going, Syrah called. The masked leader turned his gaze toward Rafi. Do not touch what you do not understand. He raised one hand, and a deep vibration filled the air. The floor under Rafi's feet shook, and an unseen force shoved him backward. He slammed against the wall, gasping. Mira ran toward him, pulling him to his feet. You okay? Yeah, he said through clenched teeth. Just need a second. Syrah pressed her hand against the altar, letting the cube's golden light flow into the silver chains. They hissed and twisted, but did not break. More shadow, she shouted. Rafi gritted his teeth, slammed his hand back into the control panel, and forced the last set of panels closed. The chamber fell into near darkness, lit only by the cube's glow and the faint red wall lines. The chains shivered violently, their glow dimming. Now, Syrah cried. She poured all the cube's energy into the altar. The golden light spread through the chains like fire through dry grass. The hum from the altar rose higher and higher, and then, with a sharp metallic crack, the first chain snapped. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. The masked leader's calm voice was gone now. Stop them! The keepers rushed forward. Mira and Rafi stood side by side, holding the cultists back with stun blasts and quick strikes. The chamber shook with every movement. Another chain snapped. Then another. The altar began to tremble. But the eclipse had begun. Through the small gaps in the roof panels, the sun's light shifted as the shadow of the moon began to pass across it. A thin ray of silver light struck the altar, making the remaining chains pulse brighter. They are trying to heal, Syrah shouted. Rafi looked around desperately. We need total darkness. Mira spotted a pile of old cargo covers in one corner. She grabbed them and ran to the altar, throwing the heavy sheets across the open gaps in the roof panels. The silver light vanished in the complete shadow. The last chains weakened, their glow fading to nothing. Sarah gripped the cube tightly and sent one final wave of energy through the altar. With a deafening snap, the last chain broke. The black stone cracked down the middle, and a rush of cold wind swept through the chamber. The leader staggered back, his silver mask tilting upward as if he were looking at something no one else could see. No, the cube's light faded. The hum was gone. The altar was nothing more than broken stone. The keepers froze, their glowing eyes dimming. Without the altar's power, they stepped back, retreating into the shadows. Mira lowered her weapon, breathing hard. Is it over? Sarah looked at the broken altar, her ears lowering slightly. For now, the Veiled One sleeps again. But the cult will not stop forever. Rafi leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Then we'll be ready next time. The masked leader gave them one last silent look, then turned and walked into the darkness. Disappearing without a sound, they returned to the Starling, the cube now dull in Sarah's hands. Outside, the eclipse ended, and the pale sun shone again. Over the quiet station, Mira started the engines. Let's get out of here before someone changes their mind. The ship detached from the station and drifted into the stars, leaving the broken altar behind. But in the far distance, beyond the reach of the pale sun, the cult's dark ship still waited. East Starling sailed smoothly through the calm black sea of stars. The broken altar and the drifting station were far behind them now, swallowed by the endless darkness of space. Sarah sat quietly in the cockpit corner, her golden eyes watching the stars as they passed. The cube in her hands was now dark and still, no longer glowing with power. She held it gently, as if it were a precious memory. Rafi and Mira exchanged tired glances. The weight of what they had done and what they had stopped settled over them like a quiet storm. Mira finally broke the silence. We did it. The Veiled One is sealed again. Rafi nodded. But it feels like this is just the beginning. Sarah looked up, her ears twitching softly. The cult will not stop. The keepers believe the power is worth any cost. They will search for another way. For now, they are weakened, but they will return. Rafi sighed. Then we have to be ready. We can't let them catch us off guard again. Mira tapped a few controls and pulled up a star map. We should find a safe place to lay low, somewhere far from the usual paths. Sarah's tail curled tightly. Round her legs, there's a place, an old sanctuary hidden in the nebula of shadows. It was once a home for my people. There, we might find allies and knowledge to prepare. The Starling changed course toward the distant nebula, a colorful cloud of dust and gas swirling in space. The journey would take several days, but the crew knew it was necessary. Rafi sat back, rubbing his tired eyes. I never thought I'd be part of something like this. Fighting ancient powers and shadow cults. Mira smiled faintly. Neither did the first, but sometimes the universe chooses for us. Sarah's eyes softened. You saved me and many others by breaking the altar's chains. My people owe you a debt. Rafi shook his head. We all did this together. Days passed in quiet travel. The crew shared stories and plans, growing closer with each passing moment. Sarah taught Rafi and Mira about her people's history, their struggles and sacrifices, their fight to protect the galaxy from the Veiled One. One evening, as the nebula's colorful light bathed the ship, Mira approached Sarah. What happens if the cult finds the sanctuary? Sarah looked toward the glowing clouds. Then we fight again. But this time, we will not be alone. Finally, the Starling reached the nebula of shadows. The ship glided through the swirling colors, the stars twinkling faintly beyond the mist. In the heart of the nebula lay a hidden station, ancient but strong, covered in strange symbols that glowed softly. As the ship docked, a group of figures greeted them, tall, noble beings with sharp eyes and calm voices, allies of Sarah's people. Their leader, a wise woman named Kira, welcomed them warmly. You carry the light of hope. Here, you will find Strength to stand against the darkness, the crew settled in, sharing the story of the eclipse battle and the shattered altar. Kira listened carefully. "You have done well," she said, "but the Veiled One's shadow stretches far. It is not enough to close one gate. We must prepare for the next." Rafi felt a new resolve growing inside him. "Then we'll be ready," Mira added. "We'll stand together," Sira nodded, "and protect the galaxy from the darkness that waits." Weeks passed as they trained, learned, and prepared. The Sanctuary's library held secrets lost to most of the galaxy. The crew studied ancient texts, learned new skills, and formed bonds with their new allies. One evening, Sira stood before a window, looking out at the stars. Rafi joined her. "You think the cult will come soon?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, but we will meet them with light, not fear." Rafi smiled. "Then I'm glad I'm here." As the Starling prepared for its next mission, the crew made a silent promise to protect each other and the galaxy, no matter the cost. The stars outside seemed brighter now. Filled with hope, the battle was over for now, but the story was far from finished.